Dahlia Lithwick now joins us. She is Slate Magazine's legal editor. Dahlia, thanks very much for joining us. I appreciate you joining us tonight on somewhat short notice.
My pleasure.
What do you know about the grounds on which the Supreme Court will be making this decision tonight? How many people will be in on the decision? Will it be the justices themselves or their clerks? And what exactly will they be deciding?
Well, we don't know much. The petition that we've seen is incredibly bare bones, Rachel, and it more or less just says, you need to stay this because we're filing a petition and it's going to be irreversibly awful if you execute him before we get this to you. So there's sort of a host of bare bones allegation. In the petition, it says newly available evidence reveals that false, misleading, and materially inaccurate information was presented at the trial in 1989. The convictions and death sentence are fundamentally unreliable. But I cannot stress how bare bones this is. So in effect, what they're saying is just give us time to get something in front of you. And I think that there's a host of allegations we've been hearing over the course of the day, that there are certainly allegations that the denial of the polygraph test today is something that they're talking about with the court, that Troy Davis wanted to take a polygraph and wasn't allowed to, that there's questions about a witness who was intimidated, and that the real culprit here was intimidating one of the witnesses. So there's, around the margins, we know that there's a lot of moving parts. I think as to the question of whether the justices themselves are looking at this, I would bet that they are. This is the third execution this week that they've stopped, and something is clearly going on at the court where they're starting to think very, very hard about these cases, and I think the justices themselves are thinking about this right now.
Dahlia, in terms of people who have been following this story for a long time, or at least who have been aware that this has been a fiercely contested death penalty case for a very long time, can you explain why it would be that at this very last hour, what's turned into the Supreme Court would be such a bare-bones document? One might expect that they would have been prepared for a long time for a last-minute appeal to the Supreme Court.
Well, the nature of the death penalty system and the capital system is you can't bring all sorts of new pleas in. You can't bring in new evidence at the last minute. There's pretty much everything that they could have brought to the court, they've brought. Don't forget, this is the fourth scheduled execution for Troy Davis. So almost every issue has been litigated, and so I think really there was, until this morning, a very strong sense that there were no issues that could go up to the Supreme Court at all. In some sense, it's a surprise that this document both made it to the court and that the court is taking it as seriously as it appears to be taking it.
Dahlia, last question for you, and this isn't precisely a legal question, but it is a question about the legal system. Do you think that the immense public attention to this case, the publicity surrounding it, the advocacy around this case, the symbol that Troy Davis has become, as well as being the object of so much specific attention, is it possible that there's any way to, is there any way to quantify how that has affected his legal chances of surviving the state of Georgia's efforts to kill him? Does it help him or hurt him at the state level to have so many people outside the prison right now with his name and his face on placards, to have so many highly visible people weighing in on this case, asking the state not to kill him?
It's such an important question, Rachel, and of course it's just speculation. On one level, the courts are the one institution that aren't meant to care that there are people standing with placards, that public opinion is what it is, that this is trending on Twitter. Public opinion isn't meant to matter at all to the courts. But I think we'd be insane to think that at every level of this process, with the growing not just national outrage, but real international outrage. You've got Desmond Tutu, you've got the Pope, Jimmy Carter, Bill Sessions, former FBI chief. Every one of those people, with all the clout that they have brought to their opposition to this death penalty, certainly is on the court's radar at some level. Certainly everybody is thinking, this is a referendum on the death penalty in America. This might be the biggest death penalty case in a decade, and we are deciding more than just factual questions about whether Troy Davis had a fair trial. So I think you're right to say, of course, all of this energy and momentum, this groundswell of opposition, at some level is playing into the thinking about this. Remember, we need 5 votes from the court. So the question really is whether there are 5 people who are thinking about that, or even just one extra person who's thinking about that. But I think it's certainly the case, like I said, when you've seen executions stayed like this and dramatically in a 2-hour lag right now where we don't know at all what's going on, it is so rare for the court to be doing something like this that it tells me that the court knows something very, very important is afoot.
Dahlia Lithwick, legal editor for Slate Magazine, and someone who I've always felt has a knack for putting legal things in a very human perspective. Dahlia, thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel.